Blog Talk Radio.
5 Lincoln 103, 5 Lincoln 102, Lincoln 103 and 102.
Responding to 401 parking structure, section 1 boy.
Henry 8, Henry 9. Respond to gate 437, Bravo, for your dignitary detail. 3K 911, unattended, 400 lower level, near Carousel 4, black bag. GTA in progress, 401 parking structure, section 4 boy.
Responding to 401 parking structure, section 1 boy.
415 passenger onboard aircraft.
Control 2 Franklin en route.
484 suspect, female, Hispanic, 28 years of age, blue jeans, no further.
Control 5 Frank 401 is en route.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Private Officer Beat Radio for this Monday, very cold Monday, I might add, December the 11th of 2017. The Private Officer Beat Radio on the air right now. I'm your host, Rick McCann. Oh my gosh, it is cold out there, my friend. Private Officer Beat Radio is a production of Private Officer International, a private security and law enforcement organization based in Charlotte, North Carolina. We've been here, for about 10 years now. We are not a new organization. If you're brand new to our show, we have been around since 2002, and in 2004 we actually changed our name to the International because we had a lot of international members joining. But we got a lot of things to talk about today, and I say that every program. I know it's old hat, just it's just part of the jargon, I guess, that we say every program. But it's true. We always have a lot to talk about, and in fact, this morning on this program, we're talking about really something not brand new, but brand new to many folks. In fact, it's something that many have not heard of at all. But before we get there, let me tell you that this past week, we actually spent a lot of time working with the figures from 2017, which, by the way, in case you don't know it, there's not a lot of 2017 left. And that means there's not a lot of time for that Christmas shopping. We talked about this last week. Of course, you got Amazon. Of course, you got door-to-door service in the same day, within hours. In fact, where I live, believe it or not, they promise to have that package at your door in 1 hour from the time that you've ordered it. And that's because there's so many Amazon distribution centers popping up everywhere. In fact, where I live, there's 2 within a couple hours drive and 1 within about 40 minutes. So if you haven't done the shopping, I guess it's not time to panic just yet. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news all the time, but well, let's just say I'm trying to give fair warning to those of you who haven't started your Christmas shopping yet. Hint, hint, Rick. I've got plenty of time. I'll use Amazon. But literally, it's just 2 weeks left to shop, and it's Christmas time, and that means it's almost the end of the year. So this past week, we did, instead of making our Christmas list and doing our shopping online or running out to the store or filling those stockings that are hung by the chimney with care. And yes, we actually do have a chimney in our office. And it's decorated. How cool is that? I was telling someone this past week, we have gotten into a morning standard around here of bringing in breakfast goodies, which we don't always do on a regular basis. We do it sometimes, but, we're all trying to watch our waistline as it grows out. But this past week, I guess because of the holidays, and including today, we actually had some goodies brought into the office, and, whew, man, that was good, too. And in fact, just as we were going on the air this morning, you caught me finishing the last bite. Oh, let me tell you, honey, I had me some cinnamon rolls that were delicious, out of this world, in fact. But last week, while we were doing all of this office busy work and not shopping and not doing anything Christmas related, we spent a lot of time putting together the statistics that we collect every year. We spent a lot of time looking at the numbers. We spent a lot of time analyzing everything that happened during 2017 in private security, public safety, loss prevention, school security, private policing, the whole gamut. And we have seen some alarming trends, which we're going to share that with you coming up on December the 26th. And in our first program in January, we're going to have the final tally of all the statistics. But on December the 26th, on our radio program on Tuesday, that's actually the day right after Christmas, we're going to be doing a show called Asleep at the Wheel. Asleep at the Wheel, because, my friends, let me tell you, as we analyzed, as we looked at the staggering numbers of assaults, security officer arrests, security officer injuries, deaths, all of the good and bad that has happened this past year in our industry, I can't help but ask the question, where is everybody? Is everybody asleep? Is everyone asleep at the wheel out there? Are you not seeing what we're seeing? Are you not hearing what we're hearing? Are you not watching even your local news? On yesterday's From the Legal Side wrap-up, part 2 of security officer arrest, and we talked about the culpability and liability of security companies, owners, supervisors, managers, even front-line supervisors. We went over some of the problems that we're seeing in the industry. A lack of supervision. I understand that the recruitment element, the training quality, the labor pool that we have to work with, I understand all of that. You know, it is what it is. But when we see the lack of supervision, the lack of companies spot checking their security, and the number of security officers arrested this year for such violent, heinous crimes such as rape while on duty, multiple security officers arrested for murder, not in the line of duty, but murder while on duty. And when we look at all of the going-ons, I just can't understand, really, for the life of me, where everybody is at this. Oh, boy. I'm at a loss for words. I want to cry out. I wish I had a larger platform, because it's not that I hate private security or loss prevention or private police. I love that industry. I've been in it all of my life, but what I hate are the employers, the companies, the clients who provide no training, no overwatch, no communication, no sense of responsibility. And let's not even get into the conversation of wages and benefits. My friends, let me tell you something. There is a revolution and an evolution in this industry that's going on. In fact, today in part one, we're going to be talking about private policing, ready or not. And let me tell you, if we can't even provide adequate service and overwatch and training and professionalism in those industrial, minimal access control type assignments, how can we begin to put our personnel even further into harm's way, even further into the front line, even further into a position of authority by allowing them to have authority over people while doing private policing for cities, municipalities, counties, states, and our federal government who are outsourcing private policing every single day. That's what we're talking about in part one, later on in this program, private policing, ready or not. My. It's alarming. It's scary. It's a whole lot of different things, and I just don't see anyone with that urgency, with that understanding, with that get up and let's get this going attitude. I don't see it. And so listen to the rest of the program. Don't hang up on me here. Don't click off now, because the best is yet to come this week and next week as we talk about private policing. In fact, just this past week, I have begun writing an article for the Associated Press that will come out later in January 2018, about a month or so away, on this very subject, private policing, ready or not. And that's going to be the title of it. And so this radio show is kind of an introduction into that article that I'm writing. And that article for the Associated Press will be carried nationwide. Anything that comes out on the AP is picked up by thousands of other media outlets, and I'm excited to be asked to write such a in-depth article based on our studies, our analytics this past year. But I'm also a little, shall I say, skeptical as to whether or not folks in the industry especially will take it serious. And I'm also, I kind of hesitated saying yes, because I don't want people, especially our members, to think that I'm throwing them under the bus, because I have no intentions of doing that. Anything that comes from this mouth, from this platform, from this organization, anything that we do or say, even sometimes though it might be negative, is really positive, because we're trying to make a change. We're trying to improve those who are providing front-line protection. And so please take it in good spirit and with proper understanding. And I look forward to the article when it's completed, edited, produced, and published. So you're going to get an insider's look right now on this edition of the Private Officer Beat Part 1, and next week in Part 2. So you're actually kind of privy. So, sit back, relax. We're going to take our first break. When we come back, we got a lot of information. We got some big-time breaking news. We've got a peek into what the upcoming weather is going to be like and what we had over the weekend. And we're going to talk about a brand new digital service that you can get involved in and profit from with no startup. Don't go away. Thanks for listening. Be right back. Whoa. Okay, go get a coffee. Grab you something for breakfast there. You got to start the day off right. But don't hang up. We'll be right back in, less than 2 minutes.
Doing drugs is like being on top of the world. Everyone says so. Everyone seems to be having one dandy old time. Hey, it's part of growing up. Or is it? Just think about this. Before you go and do something you've never done before, you just better know what you're jumping into.
Nurse, I need you to apply pressure to the head wound until I can get to it. I'm concerned she's lost too much blood.
Oh, no.
You in the corner, who are you? You're not supposed to be here.
She's my girlfriend, Doctor.
You need to wait out in the waiting room.
Please, Doctor, I want to stay with her.
Look, she's been badly injured. So if you want to do what's best for her, you need to let us do our work.
Please, Doctor, she has to be okay. I didn't mean to do this. I love her.
Wait a second. You were the driver?
Yes, but I didn't mean to. I swear, we went to dinner. I was just buzzed. I only had a few drinks.
Just buzzed? Why didn't you tell us that? In that case, your girlfriend is fine.
Hey, sweetie. I feel great. You want to get out of here?
I can't believe this. Really, Doctor? She's really okay?
What, are you kidding? No, not really. Nurse, get me a suture kit. Stat.
Buzzed driving. Maybe we should stop acting like it's no big deal. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Transportation, the Ad Council, and this state.
All right, good morning, everyone. A little bit after 7 a.m. on the East Coast and on the West Coast. Forget it. You're still in bed, asleep. I don't even want to hear it. I don't want to talk about it. It's only 4 a.m. on the West Coast. In the mountains and central, at least you're kind of waking up. You're starting to turn the corner there and thinking about jumping out of bed and getting into that shower and kicking off the day. But wherever you're at this time, wherever you are listening at this moment, whether it be on demand from our platform, iTunes, or about 8 other locations, or you're listening live, we appreciate every single one of you. And that's no bull. Well, I guess it's officially winter here in the South anyways. North Carolina, at least a pretty good part of the state of North Carolina, and South Carolina got a fair share of snow. Fair share. Someone said, yeah, that meant they got a few flurries. No. Actually, some of the cities and locations throughout the Carolinas got 4 to 8 inches. Here in the Metro Charlotte area, we saw a few flakes, but just less than an hour outside of the city, they got about 5 or 6 inches. And they were making snowmen, and schools were canceled on Friday, and everybody was having a great time. And it was a big deal. It really was. And even Atlanta, Georgia got into it because they received a good blanket of that white stuff on Friday and early Saturday. And parts of the city closed early. And for them, that's not exactly a normal situation, especially this early into the season. It's only December, and yet they did have a good covering in some areas, especially up in the upper elevations of Georgia, up in the mountains off 85, And even South Carolina, Greenville, and parts of the 85 corridor received some snow. And it was really good to see. Many areas, unfortunately, in this area, it was too warm. The ground was too warm, and it wasn't ready, prepared to receive that snow, and so it melted as it hit the ground. But it was good to see in many areas, and of course, New York City and Philadelphia and some of the other New England cities, they also had to get into the whole snow thing. But that's nothing new for them. They see it all the time. We in the South see it occasionally, and I grew up in Connecticut. I'm very familiar with snow. But to have it this soon in the season in the South is a little unusual. We haven't had many white Christmases since I've lived here, but nonetheless, it was great to see. And I hope wherever you're at, especially if you're in the snow belt, if you're in the upper lake effect area of New York and Pennsylvania and Chicago and Wisconsin, places that get that snow effect snow this time of year, where all of that moisture is being sucked up with the cold air and turns into a snow machine before the lakes freeze. If you're working up in that area in public safety, private security, policing, whatever it might be sure to dress properly. Be sure to have your vehicle prepared, the right tires, make sure that it's got good antifreeze, that you also have some emergency equipment, a shovel, snow chains, blankets, a little bit of food, and make sure that you have something in the trunk just in case you break down. You say, it's not going to happen. You never know. You never know. It could happen. So be prepared is really what I'm telling you to do. Make sure, if you haven't already, checked out our digital magazine at privateofficernews.org. All of our videos and audios and even our news and our radio show, in fact, is also available right there at privateofficernews.org. And, of course, check out our brand new website, privateofficer.com. Be sure to go through each page. It's very exciting. We've got a great-looking website, and you're not going to want to miss it. We want to, of course, thank our sponsors, Body Armor USA. These are great guys, just very friendly and helpful. They're members of our association. If you are in need of body armor or protective gear, be sure to call them or look them up online at bodyarmorusa.com. Our friends will help you out, and in fact, they're going to give you a discount just for letting them know that you are part of the Brotherhood, that you are like them, lifetime members or members of the association. If your company would like to market your service or product or even training on our websites, on our radio shows, on our digital magazine, the new digital TV program coming up, contact help desk at privateofficer.com. We have some really inexpensive marketing because we're not really trying to make a million. We just want to connect our members with your services and products. Again, if you're interested, you can give us a call Monday through Thursday from 9 a.m. until 5 a.m. That's on the East Coast at 704-831-8109, or send an email, helpdesk at privateofficer.com, and someone will hook you up. They're going to connect you. Trust me. We have a lot of things coming up in the news department. This past weekend, Saturday night, in fact, in Nashville, Tennessee, and I have to tell you straight up, and as they say from England across the pond, straight away, I have to tell you that I missed the annual Christmas dinner once again. This time, I have a legitimate excuse. it was cold, it was snowy, it was icy. Even though it wasn't very bad where I live in particular, but the travel route that I had to take from here to there, from point A to point B to get over to the hills and mountains and through the woods to Grandma's house over in Nashville, you know, it was icy and snowy, and I just didn't want to chance it. The North Carolina State Troopers had reported that they had already investigated over 600 accidents during that 24-hour period. So, unfortunately, I opted to play it safe, and I missed a great dinner with a great bunch of folks, our members and friends from Nashville, and hopefully next year I'm going to plan ahead. I'm going to spend a week, well, at least a few days in advance of the Nashville dinner, and I'm going to be there in 2018 for the Christmas dinner. Put me down. I'll have my steak medium rare, baked potato, and a salad. How's that? We also have a Charlotte office party coming up, so if you're in the Charlotte neighborhood, give us a call, RSVP, and we'll be glad to have you stop by. Also, members, we're going to invite you to our members-only conference call on Sunday, the 17th, at 7 p.m. We'll be sending you out an email about how to become part of that conference call as we wrap up the end of 2017. We'll also have a board member year-end meeting coming up. We're going to send out further information about that as well. I should also mention that during that delicious dinner that I missed in Nashville, Chaplain Rob Michaels was presented a Chaplain Service Award. Great guy. He's well deserving of it. And, you know, a chaplain, a POI member. He's helped us out during our memorial service. He's always willing to help anyone who's in distress or just needs to be, you know, have a little conversation. He's a great guy, and we're really very happy to award him that Chaplain's Service Award. Remember, guys and gals, if you want to send us your birthdays, anniversaries, or promotions, do it right now, anytime. Submit it to helpdesk@privateofficer.com. Helpdesk@privateofficer.com. We just had someone ask, how do I get an award? Well, everyone is deserving of being recognized. So just send your information to helpdesk@privateofficer.com. Rather than send you around to a bunch of different people, our help desk is the best point of contact for anyone. They will get you to that right person, that right department, helpdesk@privateofficer.com, and they will take care of you. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Tumblr, what else? Our news blogs, the radio show, and soon the digital TV, and of course our digital magazine. And if all of that gets confusing, just go to privateofficer.com right now, and you can click onto all of those links right there from the main page. We're looking forward to several great interviews that we'll be doing over the next few weeks with a deputy sheriff from Tennessee who really had a good career as a security officer, but he wanted to advance his career further. He put himself through the police academy, and we're going to be interviewing him and talking about those career progression steps. We're also going to be talking with a fraud investigator who tells me that security loss prevention agents are some of our best tipsters. You won't want to miss that coming up in a few weeks. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, lots of news headlines to share with you and to talk about, we got a few other things we want to cover, and then we're going to get right into our news topic, or our training topic, I guess I should say, at the bottom of this hour. We're talking today about private policing, ready or not. We'll be right back. Don't go.
It's a very simple thing. It only takes 2 seconds. We all know we should do it. We all say we do it, but do we? About 35,000 people were killed in motor vehicle accidents last year. More than half were not wearing a seatbelt. A brother, a father, a mother, a best friend. Is it worth it? I lost a sister. Don't let it happen to you and your family. Tell the people you love to buckle up.
All right, you are live with us again on this Monday morning. I'm your host, Rick McCann. This is the Private Officer Beat. And we've got a lot of news, but before we head over there and talk about some of those headlines, we have a brand new training instructor's level certificate that's available. We sent out that information yesterday, and it is a church security instructor. This is a 14-week training program that talks about and helps you to be able to organize the various steps to teach churches how to begin their own security staff, how to train their security staff, the liabilities and other things that go along with it, insurance needs. We also during this course, we show you how to put together your training seminar, 1, 2, 3-day training for churches. We talk and cover use of force and many other topics, and this is an instructor level. And as an instructor, once you successfully complete this course, you become an instructor for us as well. So we could dispatch you to your area, and you'll make some revenue, obviously. Also, this course is, I think it covers a lot of material. It's 14 weeks, and I think that it's also is going to help you to be an excellent trainer in other areas as well. Now, if you did not receive that special offer yesterday, please contact helpdesk@privateofficer.com. helpdesk@privateofficer.com. This course is scheduled to cost $495. That sounds like a lot of money in this industry, but not for an instructor certification, and not for the amount of material that you're going to get, because you're also going to get a lot of material for you to use during your instruction to these clients and customers. However, in the spirit of Christmas and as an introductory price, we're going to offer it for a limited time for $249.95. If you'd like more information, you can send an email to helpdesk@privateofficer.com or call Monday through Thursday, 704-831-8109. We also have a number of other instructor level certificates sponsored by POI, and you will get a certification, and also all of our folks who take training through us, especially instructor type training, become part of our team, part of our family. You can always call our office and ask, how do I do this, or this happened and what do I do? You're part of our team, part of our family. We're there to help you. So that's a benefit that you have that, normally you just wouldn't get really from any other school or organization. So take advantage of that. All right, over at the news desk, there's a lot of stuff happening. In fact, there's so much of it, we always only cover a small portion. So be sure to follow our news blog at privateofficerbreakingnews.blogspot.com. In McKeesport, Pennsylvania, this past week, several suspects have been charged with attempted murder of a security officer at a housing complex. a vehicle rode by the security officer and shouted, "I'll smoke you, security guard." Police arrested Dalen Smith, 26, and Jahia Rocks, 17, charged with attempted homicide, assault, firearm charges after firing numerous shots at the security officer, and fortunately, he was not injured. Houston, Texas police say that they have arrested a Houston bounty hunter private investigator and his girlfriend and charged him, or them actually, with international sex trafficking. It seems that Luis de Jesus Rodriguez, 26, a bounty hunter based in Houston, was recruiting young girls out of South America and then using them in the commercial sex business, and he had been under investigation for some time, and they finally made an arrest on him. Coming out of Montgomery, Maryland, that's in the D.C. metro area, a Maryland office of the state fire marshal's investigator and an FBI agent was killed this weekend in a traffic accident. The fire marshal investigator stopped to assist a person who had been involved in a car crash on I-270. That person was an FBI agent when another car crashed into them and killed them both. The FBI's name was just released. East Chicago, Illinois, or Chi-Town as they call it there, a robbery suspect was shot in the head by a security officer during a robbery of a Metro PCS telephone store. Police said that during the armed robbery, the security officer, who the robber didn't see at first, was able to get several shots off and shot and critically wounded the robber, and he's right now in critical condition. The security officer, at this point, it all looks like a great shooting. In Scott County, Kentucky, that's right outside of Lexington, Kentucky, 4 Georgetown College students have been charged with organized retail theft after they were involved in a massive shoplifting incident at a Kohl's store. The 4, Mariah Mackenzie Valencia, Arena J. Garner, London R. Polk, and Shelby Brandon, are all facing numerous criminal charges. Coming out of Myrtle Beach last week, a security officer shot a man that he said was trying to run over him with his vehicle, and he fired into the driver's vehicle. He has now been arrested and charged with a misdemeanor count of discharging a firearm within the city's limits. Now that's a very minor crime and an unusual crime to charge somebody, especially since they didn't charge him with aggravated assault or any weapon charges other than firing within a city limit. So that's very, very questionable and highly irregular, actually. 3 Dallas police officers have been indicted for the death of an unarmed man that was turned over to them by security. Police say that the 3 police officers they had a man turned over by security. They put handcuffs on him, and somewhere along the way they used excessive force. A woman in San Antonio, Texas, has been arrested after stabbing a Walmart security officer. Police say that the woman was shoplifting at the store near I-10 when the loss prevention officer tried to detain her. They got into a scuffle and a fight, and she stabbed him several times. He's in good condition, and she is in jail. Cleveland, Ohio, police there last week said that a security officer was almost shot as he subdued an armed robbery suspect who tried to hold up the Cleveland Family Dollar store. Demario Fogarty, 24, has been charged with aggravated robbery and felonious assault. A security officer was working the store. Now, it doesn't say if he was armed, because truthfully, if he was armed, he probably would have fired several shots at the armed robbery. Maybe, maybe not. But he was able to subdue and knock the gun out of the man's hand, but not before the suspect shot several rounds. The security officer was not injured, but he did get the man in custody and had him detained when police arrived. In South Bend, Indiana, a nightclub security officer there who fatally killed a man during a confrontation at a nightclub will not be charged. The district attorney's office looked at the shooting and said this is a justifiable homicide, and they've decided to decline prosecution. Police in Franklin, Tennessee, which is just south of Nashville, say that two men tried to take $1,700 worth of perfumes from the Cool Springs Galleria Mall, from a Macy's store there. Undercover police officers working a special assignment tried to arrest the men along with loss prevention. They got into a large fight, and they were finally subdued and taken into custody. In New London, Connecticut, a man there has been arrested after he pulled a knife on hospital security while they tried to restrain him. They said hospital security staff were trying to help hospital staff to get this man restrained. Carlos Rodriguez of New London was yelling profanities, breaking hospital equipment, and then brandished a knife. Police have charged him with a number of felony counts. Now, this is a very interesting story here, and one that really needs to be looked into, to be quite frank with you. In Massachusetts, the Massachusetts State Police have amassed almost $1 million in overtime security duty payments from a pipeline that's going in Massachusetts. The uniformed state troopers this year have worked hundreds of hours, allegedly, along a 13-mile natural gas spur and provided security, and so far have been paid $958,000 up until October. It doesn't include the November and December billing, and that is expected to push it well over the $1 million mark. I have issue with this because state troopers are needed in this time when our agencies are short of law enforcement and crime is again on the increase and moving violations are rampant. You know, we need those troopers actually patrolling the interstate and the cities and doing law enforcement, not being security guards. And I really have an issue with this. It's not that, you know, I want to hinder off-duty officers from making a couple of dollars overtime or working security, because that's how they actually make their living, guys. Most cops are poorly paid. Now, up in Massachusetts, the state trooper probably starts around $65,000 now, something like that. So it's not a bad pay, but in order to really have a decent living, they have to work that overtime. But this just seems a little high. $1 million, more than $1 million that they received from Kinder Morgan, the company that's overseeing this whole pipeline deal. So that's just, I don't know. I think it's a little steep, a little outrageous almost, but I think we're probably going to need to look into that a little bit more. In Missoula, Montana, besides the snow falling, a man has been arrested at the St. Patrick Hospital after throwing rocks through the window, assaulting security, and the 39-year-old man has been charged with several counts of felony criminal mischief and disorderly conduct. Justin Carter was taken into custody and is booked at the jail at this time. There are a lot of other news stories, but I want to read this one last unique story, I guess. In Altoona, Pennsylvania, Sheetz gas station business company have decided that to curb the heroin addicts from going in to their bathrooms and shooting up and dying there, they've tried to use a new technique. Something about blue lights that are designed to prevent people from finding their veins. And this very unique prevention is being installed at a number of their stores in the Pennsylvania region. Now, I use Sheetz gasoline in Virginia and North Carolina and several other states. In fact, when I just traveled up into Maryland, Pennsylvania, I use Sheetz gasoline. Very, very nice, clean gas stations. But unfortunately, some of those locations have a problem with people using the restrooms for the wrong reasons. In fact, just this past weekend, I don't know if you're a Live PD viewer or not, but just this past weekend on Live PD, they had a complaint at an AutoZone store where a man supposedly had been in the men's room for over an hour and wouldn't come out. And they called the deputy sheriffs. I believe this was in Florida. And right there on Live PD, in front of God and everybody else, they opened the bathroom door, and there he was sitting on the toilet, although I highly doubt he'd been sitting there for that long. And if he has, he's got a serious problem he needs to go to a medical doctor for. But that may have been a case where he was also taking drugs or doing drugs. They didn't really say, either way, but this is kind of thing that they say at the Sheetz gas station. They're trying to prevent people from hanging out, especially heroin addicts, and trying to shoot up because the blue lights mess up the, being able to see the veins, according to a press release that they sent out this week or last week. And so it's very interesting technology and method, I guess, to stop that. Unfortunately, heroin addiction and people dying out in public, it's almost commonplace right now. It doesn't have to be any major city. We're seeing it in small towns. It's a very sad and very tragic, and I don't know. I don't know. We have to be on top of it. We have to enforce the law. If we're security, we still need to enforce the property rules and the laws, and we also need to be compassionate about it. So, we just need to do that. We're going to take one more quick break. When we come back, we're going to get right into it. Private policing, ready or not, part 1.
Federal Aviation Administration wants you to fly your drone responsibly. Avoid flying your drone near other aircraft, especially near airports. Fly your drone below 400 feet. Always keep your drone in sight. If you see a safety issue involving drones, contact local law enforcement immediately. Fly smart. Fly safe. Have fun.
Slow down.
And move over.
When you see lights, vest,
or reflectors, please give us some room. Slow down. And move over.
We look out for you.
So look out for us.
Please.
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 Slow down. And move over.
It's the law.
It's the law. It's the law.
It is no secret to most people, especially if you listen to the news, you watch the news, you read the news online or on the newspapers, like, the old-fashioned way when we got them in the evening in front of our door. If you've been paying attention for the last 5 years across the country, in big cities and small towns across the nation, from the north to the south and east to the west, and even beyond the U.S. borders, law enforcement agencies are suffering, severely understaffed, their budgets cut to the bare bone in many cases, police agencies losing manpower to attrition, retirement, and people just up and quitting, fed up with America today. Not with the job, not with their duties, not because there's a possibility that they might be killed in the line of duty. Let me tell you something. Having been around this business since I was about 9 or 10 years old, my family and my friends, law enforcement officers, walking the beat with them when I was just 12 years old, back in the day when they had no two-way radios, they had to run, hopefully, to a nearby corner and pick up the phone that rang into police dispatch. I can tell you firsthand that most law enforcement officers already know about the downside to getting into the law enforcement career, but they do it not for the money. They do it not for the glory, but most of them still truly do it because they want to make a difference. Even though in this world, in this position in law enforcement, that's hard to do these days. But there's always an opportunity to change someone's world. You might not change the whole world. You might not even change your community, your city, your town. But you have an opportunity every day, even in the private security world, to make a difference in someone's life. And that's what they signed up for. But with everything that's happening across the country, with so many of our citizens turning against police or anyone in uniform, it doesn't have to be the police. It could be private security, and it has been private security. Many police agencies are now suffering severe manpower shortages. And that's no secret. Our government has known it for a number of years. Back when I was on years ago, law enforcement was often subsidized with different federal programs. In fact, I worked through a program called Weed and Seed, where they financed, the federal government, they financed small to mid-sized and even large city agencies with funding so that they could crack down on illegal drug dealers. I worked with a program in the Housing Authority. It was called Trigger Lock, where the federal government and federal agencies, including the ATF, cracked down on criminals with guns. And that money was pretty free-flowing at times. And so many police departments were able to bring on additional manpower and really staff up and make a difference in their community. But those funds have dried up. And many police departments are struggling because their cities and towns and states and counties have cut the funding down. Oh, we don't need X number of police. We can get by with this number. So a community, a city that normally might have 500 cops are doing now with 300. Agency after agency after agency, sheriff's departments, police departments, state troopers, all doing without, doing more calls, answering more calls for service with less people than even back in 70s and 80s. And that's a fact. And many cities and communities understand that you can only go so long without that bumped up staffing, without those resources to answer the 911 calls and to patrol the communities and to take care of the citizens, that many cities are rushing to increase visible patrols, not by hiring more cops, because many departments, unfortunately, are also having a huge problem with recruiting. And the minority politicians and community and those folks that you see in the evening news getting up saying, yeah, the cops are all against us and they don't have enough of people that look like me on the force. Well, guess what? There's an application available for you. Go fill it out. Apply today. They'll be happy because they can't get enough people, minority or otherwise, to staff their agency. And so many communities, many towns, they understand that you can't go forever without providing some real resource, some real level of service, protection for your citizens, and now they are turning, more than ever, really, to uniformed security agencies, citizen patrols, special private police officers with limited police authority, and even contract security companies that will provide mobile uniform patrols. To some degree, for as long as I've been around, private security has been hired by some communities for certain low-level guard-type work. They would guard a city building. They might guard a library. Security officers were hired to patrol city parking garages and other facilities to man post, access control, and things of that nature. But they were never hired nor intended to be used for the type of things that we're seeing police agencies now and cities hiring security staff to really be first responders. Now, we've talked about this over the last 5 years. I've even brought out a number of examples how towns have hired private security, in most cases unarmed, to respond and take reports of low-level crimes where the suspect or perpetrator had left the scene. They have been hired to patrol the community. They have been hired, in some cases, to investigate certain crimes that were considered low-level. And now we're seeing communities hiring these private security officers to patrol parks and enforce the rules and regulations, even in areas where they once had park rangers, city and county park rangers. They have been replaced with private security. Hospitals that once had special police have been, downsized, and many have changed over to private security. We expect that in the business world, but we didn't and don't expect that your local police department will be calling the security agency for backup. Is that such a bad thing? I mean, Rick, come on, is that really, you're making it sound a whole lot worse. There's a lot of concerns, my friend, a lot of concerns when private security begin to do public law enforcement, even in a minute situation, without additional training and input from law enforcement and so forth. We're going to talk about that in part 2. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a good idea. I think it could work, but there's got to be some groundwork put into it. There's got to be some stipulations in these contracts before they're signed. There has to be some forethought of additional training. It may not be the police academy, but it definitely needs to be things like conflict resolution, self-defense, use of force, how to conduct an investigation, how to write a good police report, how to do this, and we'll talk more about that next week in part 2. But I'm concerned because it's not being done. Many towns and cities who are using visible security to augment law enforcement are just throwing these unfortunate people, I guess I should say, to the wolves. Here you go, you're unarmed, you're going to respond and take a call, you're going to respond and take a report, you're going to maybe be out there on foot patrol, bike patrol, unarmed, coming into contact with God knows who, maybe the homeless, maybe a wanted felon, maybe somebody who's shooting up, he doesn't want to be arrested. We've seen it. We've seen it in California. We've seen it in Anchorage, Alaska. We've seen it in Miami. We've seen it in a number of locales that have hired private agencies to supplement law enforcement for these, low-level crimes and responses. We've seen too many times where because of a lack of thought, a lack of training, a lack of interagency communication, that the security officer is the one coming out on the losing end many times. But we've also seen, and I want to make sure I get this in there in this segment this week, we've also seen a number of private officers capturing armed robbers. We've seen a number of security officers come and rescue people having emergency medical situations where they have saved lives. We've actually presented awards to several of them. We have seen patrol services of private agencies in some areas cut down crime in neighborhoods by 20, 30, even 50%. Let's listen. Let's listen right now to what a couple of neighborhood groups are saying about their security patrols. I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all. I think it's a great thing, but I want it done properly. I want these officers properly equipped, properly trained, and have the right communications equipment so that they can get backup when necessary. But let's listen to a couple of these recent interviews with communities about private policing.
I don't know what's going to happen next. Just sorry to see them go. Parks Enforcement Patrol officers make their final rounds in Battery Park City Sunday, a security service that will now be privatized despite some loud objections in the neighborhood.
It's absolutely outrageous. We've been left without any policing power here.
The Battery Park City Authority opted not to renew its contract with the city's Parks Department, members saying there have been several problems with PEP officers over the years.
There are fixed posts that the parks officers are supposed to be at. On multiple occasions, we could not locate those officers. When we tried to audit the number of officers that are supposed to be on shift, oftentimes they were not.
Instead, the BPCA has hired a private security company that will completely take over February 1st.
We selected Allied Barton. We're very happy with their initial month.
But critics say the new private security ambassadors, as they're called, aren't empowered to do the same job as PEP officers.
They're just like police officers in the sense that they can make arrests, issue summonses, render first aid.
Union President Joe Pulio says the private guards can only call 911 in an emergency and says the authority never took steps to address any issues with the parks officers.
Everybody gets complaints, including NYPD. We don't eliminate NYPD because we have a few complaints.
Critics also say the Battery Park City Authority arranged this deal without any input from the community, and they say it makes the community less safe But authority members point out that while those Allied Barton ambassadors cannot issue summonses, they are working on a fix for that. And they also point out that this area is covered by the NYPD. Reporting from Battery Park City, Lori Chung, New York 1.
There are growing frustrations tonight among state troopers over a shortage of manpower, budget cuts, and canceled pay raises. The number of open positions is double what it was this time last year. In fact, there are more than 200 vacancies across the Commonwealth. WSLS 10's Rachel Lucas spent the day looking into this shortage. So, Rachel, how could this impact public safety right here in Southwest Virginia?
Well, here in our area, we have a lot of highways, Interstate 581, 81, so certainly there is a public concern with that. And more unfilled positions means more overworked state troopers covering more of those areas. Now, I have here a letter that was sent from Colonel Flaherty to all state police staff members voicing some of those concerns. The major one being promised pay raises will be cut, and that's thanks to the budget shortfall.
Overworked and underpaid. Those are some of the growing frustrations in Virginia State Police Department.
There are people who are just beyond frustrated. They're angry. They just feel like they've been neglected year after year after year.
So angry, in fact, this former colonel says the department is down by about 10% of its manpower. In an all-staff memo, Colonel Stephen Flaherty says since February of this year, 103 sworn-in employees and 76 civilian employees have resigned. Flaherty states many are leaving to take better-paying jobs.
They see their local counterparts making more than they are, significantly more in many cases, and this leads to frustration and a feeling of this is the way it's going to be. I've got to take care of myself and my family. I'm going to go to greener pastures.
According to the latest trooper allocation distribution model, departments in our area are already short-staffed. The model highlights how many troopers should be in each area, how many there are, and the difference. There's a shortfall in every area of Salem's 6th District, especially in Roanoke and Montgomery County, meaning more overworked troopers covering for other short-staffed areas.
They are working exorbitant numbers of hours of overtime. Many times they don't get paid for those hours.
Recruiting to fill those positions is even harder. Since February of this year, trooper applications have dropped by 48.5%. With more looming budget cuts, Colonel Flaherty says they may not even be able to afford training for a new recruiting force set to begin in the spring.
So as you heard, there's some great interaction between private security patrols and public law enforcement, and their communities are all for it, and it's all working out great. But there's a lot of concerns. We talked about training. We'll talk more about it next week. We also need to talk next week about liability. We need to talk about supervision. We need to be able to make sure that these security officers have protocols and that they have communications to their law enforcement counterparts, and that's who they're helping out there. We also want to make sure that people understand that there's limitations. There's limitations as to what they can do. We're on public street. We're not on private property. In most cases, security officers have the majority of their authority on private property, where they have control, like an agent. But when we're dealing with patrolling a street, a public street, security officers have no more authority than private citizens in most states. We have to really nail this down in our contracts. If we're going to engage our agency with patrolling city property, we want to make sure that they understand what our authority is and is not, and that we convey that to our personnel. Because on the private side, when you're on private property, it's different than when you're on public streets. You can still detain people on a public street, just like any citizen. In fact, in some states, you have citizen arrest, which is as good as police authority. But detaining a suspect may not be part of the contract. It may not be part of what the town or city wants us to do. So we need to get that in writing. we need to understand about use of force. Again, it's a little different on private property, but when we're patrolling public streets and public property, we only have the right to defend ourselves and others just like any other citizen. We have to understand what our limitations are on searches. We can't just stop anybody and begin digging through their pockets. We're not law enforcement out there. We have to be very careful because some of the laws and some of the guidance that law enforcement has on stopping and searching and detaining will not apply to us on public street. When we're on private property and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and someone crosses our path or someone is seen on the property and there should be no one there, there's no doubt that he's not authorized. We have no doubt at all. But on a public street, someone loitering on a park bench, someone loitering at a bus stop, somebody who is passed out on the side of the road, we have limited authority as to what can be done. We can help them, we can detain them, we can call law enforcement, we can provide medical attention possibly, we could do certain things, but again, we need to be very careful on what steps we take when we're on private streets. On the flip side of that, as we talked about numerous times, there's many cities that have private police, special police officers. Now, in New Jersey, for instance, there's 3 classifications of special police officers, and they are mainly employed by the city on a part-time basis to augment their city's police force during the summer months or during a busy time of the year. They have arrest authority. They can write a citation, a parking ticket. They are, police officers. They've gone to a reduced police academy. There are other states that have private police and special police. Normally, those are for private property, although some public hospitals and colleges also have them. A good example, New York. New York statutes have something called peace officer statute, and that's for anyone working in security at a hospital or a college or a school or other business, some other entity that wants to have law enforcement on their property. And there's other states that also have these statutes that provide for law enforcement authority, not security guard, not security officer, but we're talking about bona fide law enforcement. Statutory arrest authority, statutory citation authority, sworn in with those police authorities. There may be some areas that are considering that. In fact, recently in October, we told you that in Michigan, a Senate Majority Leader, Arlen McCough, introduced a new bill that's currently making its way through the House, through the legislative process, where he wants to expand that state's private police authority. There are a number of private police agencies in Michigan, but he wants to expand that to include others, including those who might supplement public law enforcement. And in fact, it says right in this bill that I'm looking at, some forces could supplement public law enforcement agencies and free them to focus on high-impact crime. Other states, like North Carolina, also use private police forces, and they patrol colleges, they patrol schools, they have full arrest authority. They can write a citation, a traffic ticket, a parking ticket. Many states use some form of private police and have those statutes that govern that. But when we're, operating as a security agency, and we don't have those type of authority, statutory authorities, then we're limited, friends. We're limited as to what we could possibly do on public streets. many communities are seeing the benefits of private security augmenting public law enforcement. And I'm all for it. I'm just saying we need to consider everything, not just be blindsided at the end when something happens. We also can't have tunnel vision and just look at the monetary benefits that we're going to reap when we sign that contract. Oh my gosh, we're going to put on X amount of guys, we're going to have 1,800 billable hours a month, and that's going to be times $26 an hour, and oh my gosh, that's going to be like a $250,000 contract. We can't be so focused on that aspect of the business. We need to set certain things into stone. We need to, as they say, hammer it out, chisel it in stone, get it down solid. And like I said earlier, some of those things are making sure that we know what our authority is. What exactly specific are going to be the duties? What communication will we have with law enforcement? Are we going to be on the same channel as them? Are they going to provide some two-way radios, or is it all going to be by cell phone communication? What extra training are we going to provide our officers? We can't just put them out there, especially in the non-regulatory states, with the minimal training required by the state, if any. We need to teach them a lot more than what they probably have had, through the regulatory training. And in some states where there's no training, God forbid, that we put these folks out there and just say, toodaloo, you're on your own, good luck. Remember the phone number to 911 if you need help. We have to do more than that. We've got to put a lot of forethought into this process before we sign our John Hancock on the line. And those are the things that I'm really concerned about. Because I know that if I were the public, and I am, but if I was someplace where private security, tried to intervene and act like police with me, it wouldn't go over so well with me, and I wouldn't appreciate it. In Chico, California, this was just announced earlier this month, last week actually. They have contracted with a security agency to begin providing patrols in their downtown business area and other districts. They're going to hire armed security. That's good, much better than providing unarmed security who, is walking through the dangers of the community, but they don't have the tools necessary. But now you have armed security, and in California, they do have a decent regulatory training requirement. The question is, we don't know if the schools do it. We don't know if the companies do it. They say they do, but we don't know. We have no true knowledge as to whether or not those security personnel completed the proper regulatory training. But if they have, in California, they are taught in a number of different things, including first aid, baton, OC, handcuffing, taser, and a number of other categories. So that's good. I think it's about 65 hours, I guess, now, maybe, of training that's required. But again, it's not the 500, 800, or 1,200 hours that law enforcement goes through, and yet some of these folks, some of our security personnel, will be on the beat. They will be patrolling just like any police patrol officer would if he was walking or driving the beat, and they will be responding to calls. Let's switch gears for a moment. We talked earlier, and I mentioned last week in my program, that some cities have hired police aides, civilian patrols, same thing. They're also patrolling. They're also responding to car accidents and theft reports and crimes that have occurred after the fact. But they're going through some additional training. In fact, several agencies that I'm aware of that use community service officers, CSOs, they go through hundreds of hours of training, even those who are unarmed. So, communities are really biting the bullet. They're really trying to do everything in their powers to augment, supplement law enforcement until they're able to get their staffing back up to where it should be. Some agencies are down hundreds of officers. Virginia State Police announced last month they're down about 200 state troopers. Many city police departments are down hundreds. Houston, Texas police announced this year that they've lost more than 30% of their police officers in the last 5 years. Let me tell you, I know there's a problem. The National Institute of Justice of the U.S. Department of Justice, in their research, they examined crime in America, and they said there's no doubt it's on the rise. Homicides, shootings, all sorts of felonies, violent crimes on a big spike. Property crimes, again, jumping rapidly. Juvenile crime, juvenile violence really taking off. But they say because of the Ferguson effect, because of the distrust and dislike for cops, police agencies, many of them are an all-time low. Staffing has never been so bad. In many departments, morale has never been so bad. And we all to Black Lives Matters, President Obama, who didn't step forward, didn't help law enforcement, didn't back them up, didn't stand with them. And that's just a fact. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. This show isn't political. I'm just stating a fact. Next week, in part 2, we're going to look at how some of these communities are already using private security. We're going to use some statistics from the FBI to show you the likelihood that this situation will continue for years to come. And there's no good news in sight. And so the use of private security, private police, isn't going anyplace but up. Are we ready? Are we prepared to take on those responsibilities, those duties, those obligations? I'm telling you, the job is a lot bigger than just putting somebody in uniform and sending them out through the community on patrol. We're also going to show you or talk with you next week about one such security company who was pinned down while making community patrols this year with rapid gunfire from AR-15s and several other weapons, and barely escaped with their lives. Private policing. Are we ready? That's all for this edition of the Private Officer Beat. We'll be back next week with part 2. Be sure to check out all of our previously recorded programs right here. You can, at any time, day or night, access the more than probably 1,000 programs or whatever, radio shows. We've been broadcasting for 10 years now. Be sure to check out yesterday's part 2 of our From the Legal Side, and of course, join us Wednesday on the LP Zone. Until then, my friend, be safe, be blessed, and we'll see you right back here on the radio.